Okay, let's talk about Daniel Jones finally signing with a new team. Decides to go with the Indianapolis Colts on a 1 year deal. We don't yet have the price tag for that. We will see how it ultimately goes and how much money he gets. But 1 year deal. This feels very much like I think. I think it's an interesting move here by the Indianapolis Colts, actually. And I think it's an interesting move by Jones, who did have options here, deciding to go with the Indianapolis Colts because essentially what is getting reported is he will get an opportunity to compete for the starting job. So that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get it, but if you remember, it's not that dissimilar to Baker Mayfield when he went with Tampa Bay, where Baker Mayfield decided to go to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay still had Kyle Trask, a second-round pick that they were considering starting, but they brought in a veteran quarterback to say, hey, let's have these two compete, and whoever is better wins the starting job. They were actually listed both as quarterback one on the depth chart in the preseason, but Baker Mayfield was better in the preseason, so he got the starting job, and then the rest is history. He ended up being a solid quarterback, and still is a solid quarterback for them. I think that the Colts are doing something very similar, where they're saying, hey, Daniel Jones has shown flashes with the Giants. And while I don't think it's been perfect, it's also fair to say, I mean, we've seen with someone like Sam Darnold that sometimes when you're in a bad situation, or someone like Baker Mayfield, sometimes when you're in a bad situation, there is only so much you can do. And while I think it's still fair, I always am a believer in you can still evaluate a player even in a bad situation. Daniel Jones, it was not all his, it was not all his fault. It wasn't the fact he wasn't a superstar level quarterback there either. I think even with the situation around him, I will say though, it was a tough situation around him, and I think that this is a really smart move by Jones to go to the Indianapolis Colts for a couple of reasons. So, reportedly, the Vikings wanted to keep him, but he decides to go with the Colts. Well, is that smart? Well, maybe because it seems like the Vikings want to go with J.J. McCarthy. I can't imagine they're going to have McCarthy start on the bench for a second year. Remember, McCarthy was scheduled to be the backup behind Darnold last year. I wouldn't think that they would do that again. So I think that that's one aspect of this is you can almost, I wouldn't say guarantee a starting job because you have to beat out Anthony Richardson, but you're going to compete to be the starter for a whole year. Not just be the starter, but the Colts are not a bad roster whatsoever. If they can get decent quarterback play, this can be a potential playoff team. And we've seen with Sam Darnold, with Baker Mayfield, you get a full year starting, you're getting $100 million if you can be effective, right? So that's kind of what they're looking at right now. So it's also contract details have been announced yet. The money has been announced. $14 million for a 1 year deal. Yeah, again, maybe feels a little bit high, but it's because he's not just a backup. He's also a guy who has a chance to start. Although still, even for that contract, does make you believe a little bit Anthony Richardson's in trouble. And quite frankly, Anthony Richardson has to play great in this, in training camp and has to play great in the preseason if he's going to maintain the starting job. Because at a certain point, and we've already seen the Colts try and move off of Richardson when they benched him for Joe Flacco. At a certain point, you have to just find a quarterback who can play well. And for Richardson, he does a lot of things really well. So far, playing quarterback hasn't been one of them. That could change. He is an incredible athlete, and he does have this arm talent. But ultimately, if it doesn't result in a good quarterback, then who cares how far you can throw it or how fast you can run, right? And, Jones can move as well. I do think that if you want to have some of these designed runs, you can do that with Daniel Jones. I always felt like the Giants kind of left some on the table with that because he's a fast player and he can move well. So I do think that that's one of the more underrated aspects of his game. So yeah, I mean, as a whole, I do think that I like this move. I really like it from Daniel Jones's perspective, and I kind of like it from the Colts' perspective. Again, you're not paying big money to one of the top free agents, but you're making something happen here with Jones. I know Daniel Jones, again, I feel like Daniel, I got a lot of criticism for some of my Daniel Jones takes a couple years ago. I just didn't think that he deserved $40 million a year. I don't hate Daniel Jones as a player. I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the world. And on a reasonable deal, he could do all right. And I don't think it's out of the question he could have a Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold type of run here, although he wasn't quite the prospect that those guys were coming out of college. But still, you get my point. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.